My name is Blake. I'm here with Martin. Good morning, Martin.
Morning, Blake. How you doing?
Pretty good. So I myself, I work in the staffing industry, and it was actually kind of a smart idea Martin had on me helping out these different people that have been affected in the recent round of layoffs. And we kind of came together and thought like, hey, what if we do a little bit more of an interactive, way of, talking and just trying to delve into our own personal experiences, but what we see going out in the world as a whole. So thank you for, joining me this morning.
Thanks, Blake. I appreciate being here, and it's always fun. I mean, been a customer of Robert Half, and it's fun to interact with my colleagues in industry.
hmm I guess, do you want to delve a little bit into your own personal background and
Sure, I'd love to. Well, first of all, I started my career as an individual contributor, electrical engineer background, self-taught in software engineering in the early days. Actually, more formalized that over the years with some actual real courseware and substance to back it up. Developed many consumer-facing applications and in consumer electronics, handheld devices.
okay.
Things that are used for sporting goods, etc. Lots of fun stuff. Then got into healthcare and software development and some other areas. Have my requisite of carpal tunnel in both wrists from millions of lines of code, banging on the keyboard. Climbed the ladder. Started managing people. That was fun. Still is. I've been doing that for a few decades now. Yes, decades. And I love inspiring people to do what they do best, which is basically a role of enablement, empowerment, and letting the best creative juices come out of my people.
I think especially too, and just the not only software but technology industry, you're working with very high level intelligent people, and that can be an interesting problem, just managing those styles of teams.
Absolutely. I think one of the advantages that I think I have in these areas is like a bird of a feather. I've lived the life in the trenches. I understand what it's like when you're facing a problem solve and the work environment, whether you're in cubicle row or at the table, facing people with headphones on or you're virtual. The problems are the same. The real critical elements are high touch communication, high touch on expectations, leading people to success, and encouraging people to ask lots of questions. And when they run into challenges, raise their hands early. I'd rather have a fast fail and repair than an epic fail 6 months later, right?
It's very true. I mean, I have zero experience in your field, but I can say as an outsider looking in that, I've worked with a lot of different directors, a lot of different managers, people in the C level, and you're definitely one of the more personable ones. And I've been, how would I put this? In the blast radius, not directly involved in bad projects, fortunately, but I've seen other companies where those basic lines of communication break down on a very big, very important, let's say critical application development process or some kind of rollout. And you just kind of sit back and watch and say, well, that probably could have been done a little bit better. And then other times, companies with great cultures, they communicate well to the employees, they have the right expectations built in. You're like, everything just runs perfectly, or as perfectly as it can, I should say.
Well, Blake, nothing's perfect, but what we can do is work towards perfection. And that is a process that is part of the journey. And, it's really fun to engage, even collegial, where, your point of view may not be the same as others, and coming to see the light of how to push a solution to be better than anticipated. It's fun to pull all the puzzle pieces together and manipulate the structures, etc. there's a technology overlay component. Yes, I'm a geek at heart, and the rage of the last couple of years has been in machine learning for me, and double air quoted artificial intelligence, because it's a subset that I'm
I
working
like
in.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, AI at the ubiquity point is not achievable, but many benefactors as it applies to machine learning and productionalizing that has been proven. It's showing its true colors and value. You're seeing it every day. You may not realize it. The fact that we're able to talk on these cameras and some video manipulation happens in the background that helps pull our audio and video together in alignment. It's not necessarily machine learning, but it's the learnings of technology overlaid on it.
Hmm. And I mean, you can speak a lot more intelligently on the subject than myself, but I guess sort of just backtracking a little bit, you were talking about projects and kind of bringing things kind of to the correct endpoint in the field of machine learning, AI. In your most recent role, do you have any, I guess, experiences or projects or things that really kind of caught your attention, or that
Oh,
kind of
yes.
highlight that?
Uh, so let me back up a couple steps. I think
Okay.
if you rewind just maybe 5 to 7 years ago, where the data scientist was a really hot commodity, and where to start off in this venture, and it's a really strong, important skill set in making the reality of where machine learning ends up. And it's an awesome place of this line between innovation, business analysts, and software development. And fast forward, those tools and techniques have matured, and then the processes over the last several years. And one of the epiphanies coming into the large organization I came into was, it was still looking like it was 5 to 7 years ago kind of thought process, and it just was thrown over the wall. It wasn't really productionalized, wasn't button tightened. How do you monitor it? How do you measure it? How do you define it? How do you make it sustainable, supportable? And pulling that all together is part of an SDLC, a software development lifecycle, and overlaying that to any data science initiative as it productionalizes is really critical. And that's probably the easy epiphany that showed up in my journey, where I had multiple models under management. I mean, greater than 50 models went into production. Interesting cases, a model is defined by code and data and some configuration, just at a simplicity level. And several models may actually be similar to each other in intent, but because of geographic boundaries, the data is different. Thus, the model is technically different. Just for clarification for the people that don't understand that.
No, absolutely. And I'm a little bit of a simpleton. So actually, one question I had, when you say productionalizes, what does that entail?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So to productionalize, let's go backwards forward. Let's talk about a consuming experience, the stakeholder that is looking for the resultant of it. And that may be something that hits an e-commerce site. It may be part of a supply chain. But let's take the example a little further. The intended outcome is to maybe drive more revenue. And how do you measure that? And how do you associate that? And then work your way backwards to getting all the componentry in place to be able to do those metrics and pulling it together. And it's not actually that simpleton. It actually is, I would call it common sense, which isn't so common. And and then applying it to the software development lifecycle, infrastructure as code as you deploy, how you scale it, not overscale it. That's a critical point, because a lot of these models are developed in languages that aren't as optimal for performance. More specific, Python, great for development. However, to get the MIPS out of it, the instructions per second performance, you kind of want to run accelerators on them, or you pay for high priced hardware or hardware acceleration. If you could do that same development in a earlier generation language like a C++, your productionalization for performance goes up a couple notches. You'll need less compute, but the development cycle, you're going to lengthen by a large amount. And also the acumen to do that and the libraries and the tooling are just not there. So you find these newer generation languages, the Scala, the Go, the Golang, Python, obviously, in these areas. And so it's fun to have these discussions about, well, we wouldn't have to use as much on our cloud infrastructure bill today if we step back and we could figure out some ways we can optimize. And that's also in productionalization too.
I see. No, I like you kind of delving into that. So my brain, the way I work, at least, people know I'm in the staffing industry, or even I used to work at Verizon. I was like a team leader. I have an A B mind. So I'm like, okay, we're at A, how do we get to B, and then how do we shorten that process in between? So actually I liked how you brought up the different languages and different kind of hardware and cloud infrastructure you can use, because it's for people like me that just maybe have a more general understanding. It helps me kind of wrap my brain around that whole process.
Yeah. Let me digress a little bit and go into a little more about my background. First of all, I'm also a private investor. I do the work I do today as team leadership and individual contribution because I love the work, and it inspires me. It's what I think about every day. When I wake up, what can I do today to make tomorrow better? What can I do for my people to make them motivated to think that way? And how do I help them achieve? So it sounds simple, but I apply a sports metaphor. I come from athletics. I played the team sports. I've coached. I've been an individual contributor. I'm not of the caliber that I was. I'll never be what I was. I was always faster in the former life than I am today. I used to compete in running, cycling, martial arts.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. The martial arts career stopped in my 30s for reasons of coming to the office with a black eye or broken ribs. That's kind of hard to explain to your peers that you like doing that.
Which one did you partake in, out of curiosity?
Yeah, so I actually have a black belt in a mixed martial art. It's called Kaji Kembo, and it's developed in the Hawaiian Islands. I could go on to this topic for days, but let's not bore everybody and scare them that I'm an evil person.
No, of course not. But it is kind of interesting how you apply the sports methodology in a way to, engineering, because it does. I think many kinds of work have many kinds of similarities in that sense. The mindset that you take to it. How are you going to improve things? How are we going to move things forward in a positive manner?
Absolutely. So think of applying to personal best. When you think of competing in a timed event, your personal best is based on time, and you're always trying to shave time off. So when you're working in a team, like in an agile sense, and you're developing something, you're defining that work, you're defining the expectations of it, you're guessing, I'm going to name that tune in 5 notes, and then you track this amongst the team members. And ultimately, some team members are better at predicting their expectations versus time because of maturity or knowledge. And then some are, they're evolving, and you mold that all together to get everybody as a team to be personally best.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, yeah, that's something that I personally don't have experience with, and it's really interesting, kind of someone with your background, kind of, how do I say it, pulling up the hood, kind of showing what's going on underneath in that sense. Yeah. And I guess sort of digressing, but also moving a little bit forward, with your experience you had at Levi's and your past experiences and where you see kind of the market going, what are you looking to move into in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been hiding from public companies until of recent time. I did really well earlier in my career. I was a CTO of a company that was private. It went public and then acquired, and then I stayed out of the public eye for a couple decades intentionally. I love innovation. I love thriving for solutions. There are several areas around AI that I think are lightly tapped that are prime for future success. You've heard of some things probably in the public about Microsoft and investment in OpenAI or, ChatGPT specifically, generative technologies. Some people are worried about losing their jobs to these. I'm thinking it's creating a new higher level of innovation in work to be aspiring to. And so I'm looking to drive that to the next level. I'm talking with other investors. We're talking about how can we optimize and build something new and creative and just make it a better solution when we deliver services to our end customers.
It is actually interesting you say that because even, I talk with a lot of people in the C-level. One of our family friends is former like CISO at a large bank, and he's like, oh, this could be really bad, really eliminate a lot of things. I'm like, well, in a way, it's almost like the calculator. Before we had the calculator, humans had to spend months and months doing all these calculations by hand. So maybe ChatGPT or these other functions will turn a lot of writing, a lot of our communication into the way that basic mathematics were in the past. But, time will tell. But I'm kind of more in your line of thinking that I think it's going to open up new things that we couldn't have imagined 5-10 years down the road.
Absolutely. So when we talk about like copywritten material, the writing aspect or artistic as rendering, there's some elements of lines of crossing, and I won't get into the ethics or the legal matters associated with it, but yeah, you could use these technologies as a template for starting something and molding it to be what you want it to be, as opposed to plagiarism, which is the bad word, right? So we don't want to plagiarize, and although you can articulate maybe it's not plagiarism, well, in part it is. So you're grabbing something pre-written, whether it's munged and massaged or it's drawn or created. It is a form of that. So I caution using it for that. But I think for specific applications, great leverage points for creative writers. If you want to see it that way, I see it that way. My wife's a creative writer. She's a published author, and I'm sharing techniques that she could apply that could help her templatize some of the simple stuff she does. When she writes a book, it's a little different. That's a different thought process. But when she's writing a simple article and she wants to frame it up with referential information, these generative technologies would be super helpful in pulling it together.
And, right now we just see ChatGPT or this GPT-3 more around like writing things. With your background and what you've seen, where are these other, because I don't know, is ChatGPT going to be this really massive innovation that's going to, really change things permanently? I know you did a podcast on this recently, so I don't want to make you like rehash kind of what you were talking about. Maybe I can post a link to that later. But where do you see some of the big changes maybe in the technology industry coming up with these new technologies?
Wow, Blake, thank you for the shameless plug for myself. The Unriveted podcast coming to you. Yeah. So there I don't want to let the cat completely out of the bag, but there's a couple of things in the laboratory right now that leverage ChatGPT specifically that I have going that are eye openers. It's not just about ask a question, get a simple response. It's about the interactivity of it and leading it to a next direction and actually a higher level usage. In fact, I think it's so unique, the things you can do, that you have to think 2 levels up from what you see and what you hear about these generative technologies you see today. There's definitely a lot of excitement.
Would a good analogy, because I like to dumb it down and then also use something more tangible. Like, would it be kind of like how, let's say, a donkey could move around a lot of things, but if you don't have the creativity or you're not thinking about, oh, let's have it plow this field or do this thing, it's just going to walk around eating grass?
I love donkeys. They're so cute. I want to associate with more animals. Let me give you a simple case, and these are well understood today. So you could use the generative technology with the updating of the data sets for specific customer service needs. Interactive bots assist with the human in the background monitoring, where they can run 5 customer, 10 customer interactions at the same time and basically overseeing it and noting places where they really need to jump in and ask the deal with the harder questions, the harder things that haven't been felt in the data that's already there for regurgitating out for a consuming experience. That's already there today, but it can only improve. And then think of the multilingual capability of that, and translation on the fly for these kind of sessions, where potentially you don't need native tongue speaker at some point, but I don't think we're there yet. There's just too many nuances in certain languages that you're not going to be able to come across. It's going to come across weird for some interactions to just do a machine translation.
I could definitely see that. I mean, even I don't know, I speak a good amount of Spanish and some French, and even when you use Google Translate or even Apple Translate, the basic, if any normal person read it, they'd be like, oh, well, a can, it's not referring to a metal can, it's referring to the verb, but it's a computer, at the end of the day, these are programs written by humans. And even if they are smart, like you said, you need to think two levels above. Every mistake that can possibly be made, it will make. Or I don't know if you followed a very large company that everyone knows by name, I don't want to get in trouble, was using a software to find, because it applies to recruiting, to help recruit people, help filter resumes, and their AI, machine learning, whatever you want to call it, system was actually discriminating against women because it was using the previous data sets of previous people that were hired. And there was, unfortunately, for many years, they would not hire as many women, or they'd kind of discriminate in their hiring practices. So for me, that case always has caught my attention.
Well, and absolutely, as I point my fingers this way, you notice those are my kids behind me. I have two daughters, and I want them to be successful, not discriminated against. And so, so that's a function of how a model can be trained with what the data set is. And if the data set is limited, then you have to step back and say, I need to augment that. And there's a way to repair that, and a way to work with maybe synthetic data. And that's just another topic to repair those kind of scenarios, because you're trying to manifest an equality state. And also, you can talk about color of skin, and, you can get around that too. But you have to be careful that you're not simplifying some of the cases. Technology is great, but it doesn't solve discrimination.
Yeah. And I think even just in that one instance, it's like, when you look at the data, if you had really stepped back and analyzed it, you'd be like, oh, actually, maybe this isn't the most perfect data set to use, because it's just processing. All it's doing is processing. It doesn't understand our culture or things like that. It's just doing what you tell it to, and that can be a big issue,
Absolutely. I mean, just us talking, the intonation of my voice, the intonation of your voice, we can capture all the text from a transcript, but you may miss me being really excited, or, just kind of lulling it out. You're going to miss that intonation in just the pure textual form.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, I apologize. I might be backtracking a little, because we sort of digressed off into this topic, which it's interesting. It's nice to talk about when we're looking at the future of what's going to be coming with machine learning and AI, because in a way, it's like you kind of got hit in this round of layoffs. What are you looking for in the future, or what topics are so interesting that you'd be like, hey, if somebody in my network had an opportunity relating to something, like, feel free to talk to me about it.
Sure. Well, I have my toe in the water on a couple areas, because I work with an incubator from a venture firm, and I can tell you that the area of computer vision and how computer vision can be associated at the edge for improvements of various types of businesses, such as physical retail stores, can be improved. Location tracking the user experience in a store computer vision. Also, we already know about security cases. We already know about other things. But then there's healthcare and computer vision, and those are just kind of the eye openers for where computer vision can go. Just general solutions across the board for healthcare can be optimized, as we know. If you've ever gone to the doctor and then you get a referral to another doctor, you don't always have your data transferred, or you have to have some, digital handshake to make it transfer. Clearly, there's improvement there, and I worked on a solution several years ago for that, for patient records. That's not AI, but if you apply how you can interpret the records and maybe genetic history of the patient, and you could probably come up with new ways of better healthcare practices around that.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of interesting. So anybody that is, I'm not a famous podcaster, but anybody that will watch my previous podcast, kind of in the vein of AI and this machine learning, the previous gentleman I was talking to, Yatindra, he was talking about how CXL, the increase in computing power, kind of immensely, like basically able, in a layman's terms for me to explain it, like if you could take the power of, let's say, a whole data center and then apply it with an AI algorithm, a machine learning algorithm, the power of us to kind of bring insights out of data and things is going to be so much stronger than it is currently, because we have all these concurrent technologies that are developing. It's like AI and machine learning are taking up all this attention. ChatGPT, every single person I talk to mentions ChatGPT, and I have to listen about ChatGPT. I mean, it's fine, it's good, I understand, but there's these other technologies going on as well that all of these together are going to make some pretty substantial changes that we can't see because it's going to be in the future, and everybody's off doing their own thing, and maybe not all these technologies are getting, they're not cool, they're not sexy like ChatGPT, so you're not going to hear about them.
I think one of the things, bringing up what the gentleman you referred to, and acceleration technologies that could be applied to the data center. I mean, that's prime time. That's infrastructural. I think you'll see advancements in an infrastructural build out. Think of the applications for our Department of Defense or other nations. National security, detection of fraud. I mean, the applications are there. It's how you apply them and the efficacy, the big word. And you really can't just raise the flag for efficacy without having a way to measure it. So it's sort of like flying an airplane without an instrumentation panel in the fog, and there's a mountain in front of you. You're going to fly the plane right into that mountain. You need to have the instrumentation. So that's another one of my expertise is that I consult on often is observability, and as it leans to explainability, which is the AI side. So those two can intersect very quickly. That's more infrastructural opportunity for measurement and detection. Acceleration is a topic of its own. When I talked about the languages, if we can do acceleration on the languages, acceleration on the infrastructure, and acceleration on the usage, we can actually lower our carbon footprint too. So there's even more excitement. I think the applications are limited by the one's personal innovation, but not the possibility. The possibility is way out there.
I see. And just, because I have kind of followed some of the work you've been doing. Is that kind of what you do with MVision with your different clients and things like that? Kind of talking about the, how would I say it? The, what would you say? What were you calling it? Not instrumentality, the observability, kind of what you were referring to earlier, that forward seeing vision, we have all this technology. How are we actually going to direct it towards this goal?
Absolutely. So I'll let the cat out of the bag of one of the companies I'm assisting. It's in the area of diagnostics, non-invasive, for using the eyes and the characteristics and analysis to circumvent an issue with driving under the influence. That could be alcohol or drugs, and building that data set and working on that. And that's an exciting application. I love it. I put my passion into that one for that business owner, and I advise them. That is a wonderful case of AI in action working for the right purpose.
Yeah.
And those are little openings to where I think the practical sense is it's not killing jobs, but it is improving the outcome.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, yeah, it's definitely. For anyone that knows me personally, at one point in time, I was training to be a police officer, and once they're there, they're not losing their job. And quite honestly, one thing the statistics kind of say too is like the biggest life-saving thing they would tell us is like the biggest way you can save lives is pulling over drunk drivers. It's not gonna be some crazy thing that you see in the movies. It's gonna be, somebody had 3 beers, they think they're okay, and then they run a red light and hit some innocent family, and that's actually a very interesting application of that technology.
Yeah. And so I'm assisting in that company's journey, and that will surface hopefully a little sooner for the public, but moving along quite well. I think the magic of innovation and entrepreneurship will just continue at a higher level is what you're going to see with this new world of AI.
I don't see it stopping anytime soon, and I just see it. How would I put this? It's gonna get very interesting and very scary in some ways because it's gonna challenge the way many things have operated for a long time.
I'm glad you brought that up. One of my excitements is I accept change. Yeah. Change. That's the key point. Change. Life is changing. The environment is changing, and how we operate is changing. Mm-hmm. You want to change and go with it. You want to help drive change. Those that drive change will always be driving it. Those that accept change and don't morph with it get into these places of stagnation. And that's the unfortunate part. There's no guarantee of that stagnation sustaining.
That's a perfect way to put it. I mean, and just to kind of anyone that's watching that was affected in these recent round of layoffs, you could almost use this time as like a good time to sort of reestablish yourself, rebrand, retrain, sort of prepare for this next 5 to 10 years of changes that are coming. I have some people in my network, like let's say they had been at the same company for 5, 10, 15 years, and maybe they don't have the right, let's say, programming skills, or they're not up to date on the most recent technology. I have some people I know, they've been working on Citrix for a very long time, and I get that smile every time I bring that up because there's still solutions out there with some of our clients that when that person loses that job, and if you're dependent on a very old technology stack, that can be a huge problem. But I'd say in a hopeful tone, we have so many resources available now that I didn't really see available 5, 10 years ago, whether it be Coursera or Flatiron or all these other options you have out there, that within 2 months, 3 months, you could take somebody that has zero technical background and they could be, like coding, building projects, working on teams. And it's very impressive, some of the work I've seen through these new education tools.
Absolutely. And I like to point out a delta between the educational desire and the motivations.
Yes.
And then the reason I pull this out is I've always been a builder. I've always built physical things when I was little, and even today with my kids, and there 3 of them are adults. We've always built things, and being a builder, builders will continue to build. It has nothing to do with the technology. It could be building a table. It could be building a widget, something technical. And applying your overlay of technology with that makes you even stronger. If you don't have that core desire to pick up a screwdriver to fix something that's very simple, and you want to hire someone to do it instead, you're missing that builder mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And builders will always build. And it's easy for a builder to find a new location to keep building.
That's a great point. I mean, you can have all the skills in the world, but if you don't have the right drive, it's doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
Hey, well, Martin, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out today. It's been really great talking, and hopefully we'll get this all posted up. And anybody that has any questions, you can feel free to reach out to myself or Martin directly. I'll have you tagged in the comment section, Martin.
Thank you so much, Blake. It was a pleasure to be here and share my journey and my plug for Unriveted.
Perfect. Okay. Have a great day, Martin.
Thanks, Blake. Take care.
Bye-bye.